iBuzzer is a separate program. I believe he is $5 is what he charges for this program. It's a separate one you run. It takes the telemetry and gives you a bunch of different information. It has a whole bunch of things that you can do with it. I'll begin by saying that even though I have a fourth screen, this is not something I run on the fourth screen. It's something I will never race without. It'll always be running, but it usually just runs in the background because I like the verbal part of it. And so some of the things that this will do that I use, it'll actually give you audible countdown to your pit stall. It'll give you a 10 stall warning, and then it'll count down from 5 to 1 right into your stall. So no matter where or other cars are or where they're at, it makes it so much easier to find your pit stall. And when you got a lot of cars in your race, that can be an issue sometimes in missing your pit stall, and that is very helpful. Another thing that it does is it will count down, an audible countdown of laps since your last pit stop. Not laps in the race, not laps to the finish of the race. How many laps you've run since your last pit stop. So if you're in a practice session and you get out there and you've run a few laps and you think, oh, this set feels good, and you just keep running laps, you keep running laps, keep running laps, and then you go, well, how many laps have I run since I got out here? Well, every lap you run, when you go through turn 3 and 4, it'll say 1, 2, 3. It'll just give you that countdown every time you go through there, and so then you know exactly how many laps you've been on the track since you pulled out of the pits. Now you're thinking, okay, I'm on a 20-lap run, or I'm a 25-lap run. This car's still feeling great. Now go ahead and take some tire temps. You don't even have to look and count how many laps in your lap counter. You already know before you stopped that car and read your temps how many laps you just ran that run on. What's really helpful too is once you get in a race, it starts looking like it's going green. You don't have to try to think what lap was it we pitted on last time. This thing's already telling you how many laps you ran since the last pit every time. All you got to do is remember to listen for that number when you come around through 3 and 4. Road course, it's a couple corners before you get to that last straightaway. And it'll just give you that number, and you'll know that's how many laps since the last time I pitted. So you can run that through your mind real quick. Very useful information. Another thing is, it's got a gauge set that's involved in it. So if you have a problem where you can't see your gauges because you're using field of view, you can bring up a set of gauges. 4 different sizes. You can go from real small. This is a medium size. You can go to bigger to tiny where they're real small, and you can run this in an overlay type deal above your race screen and make it as small as you want, so it would run down here where your normal gauges would be. Not in your field of view, but across that dash where you can see it. And you can have them customized. If you look right up in the top right there in this area, you can customize where that starts giving you warnings on temperatures. So if you're a Dega head or a Daytona guy and you're always pushing, but you don't want to push till it starts flashing red, you'd rather have 3 or 4 more temps or degrees earlier to give you the warning that it's time to start switching. You can have it will give you an audible warning that you're hot, check your gauges, and it'll also give you the visual if you've got this up. You can also set the opacity of this so that you can see through it easier, so you're not blocking anything when you do come over the top of that. So that's a nice visual and audio part of that. And that will give you oil temps, oil pressure, water temps, and fuel. And you can choose whether you want a voice or just a tone. You can set up a custom sound, a custom tone to what that is. So for instance, what I've done is the Jimmy Johnson spotter pack. I've gone in there and found where Chad Canal says check your gauges, put that as my custom tone. So when it gets to a point that my gauge has hit my temperature that I need to know, Canal will come on and tell me to start check my gauges. So I get an audible. I don't have either one of these up, but I get an audible warning to check him. He's telling me to check my gauges, so then I know I'm either, and the way I set it up is I just do it for water and oil because I have other things that monitor my fuel, so it only tells me that, or only tells me to check my gauges when I've got water or oil. That's what happened. That's in this section right up here is what it's telling. Another part of that section, if you're looking right there, is you can set up to PM a channel, PM all drivers, PM a certain driver, or you can have a PM list. If you've got four or five people you run with all the time, you can put their numbers in here, and it'll PM each one of those guys when you reach that temp. It'll send them a PM saying, hey, your temps are too high. And that tells them, hey, you're blinking, switch. You never had to say anything, you never had to type anything, iBuzzer did it for you. Got to that temp range, told everybody on your PM channel to do it. So that's a really nice little feature right there. So you can do that. You can just do it to the default channel, which is typically your driver's channel, so everybody will see. You could do it just to a certain car, which you'd enter the block. You could have a whole PM list. Right, and then right here is where you could pick a certain channel that you want to PM it to. So if you got your team on a favorite channel, you can put that in here. This is our team channel. And then that's where you would set your default channel. Okay? For your PM defaults and the default channel as far as what you're listening to when you go into load up iRacing. Here's where you get your show gauge. Hit this button, that's where you get your show gauge, and this is where you set that opacity. 100% means you can't see through it. If I turn that down to a lower number, it gets to the point where this kind of gets ghosty, where you can see everything underneath it real easy, but you can still read stuff. So if you're overlaying it over your iRacing screen and you don't want to lose what's in the background, you just would lower that opacity number to be able to see what's behind it and not lose your gauges. Really a great function. For $5, you're getting a ton of function just with that, without having to buy, you know, like the Z1 that's $60 or whatever. In that range, you get that same function with the gauges. Now there's some other advantages to Z1 that makes that dollar number for that software well worth it, but to get to that. Okay, when you're in a server, whether it be practice or race, everybody that's in that server will show up right here by their name, and it'll give you their I rating right here, and it'll give you right up here next to this, it'll tell you what that strength of field is. So if you're one of those guys that's worried about what's the strength of field of this race, if you've got this on another monitor, you can glance right there and know about what the strength of field is. It's not perfect in what it calculates for the strength of field based on what's in there, but it's very close. It's close enough that you're going to have a real general idea what that strength of field is. So if you're worried about that. So that's what this section is. It'll tell you right here. It'll give you all that lap info and race lap, how many laps to go, what flag condition you're under. All of that information will show up right here in this section. Okay? Also tell you what track you're on, so that information. Over here is where you would set up, you got a start stop button. Anytime you make changes, you can stop it, make changes, restart it, and go. You don't have to shut down iRacing or anything for that to change what you're doing. All you have to do is stop iBuzzer, make whatever change you want, start iBuzzer, and those changes immediately take effect right then and there. Up here in this area you have, so I have an enable countdown to pit stall. That's where you enable it. And the default thing is that you're going to have your computer generated Anna voice or whatever it is. That's going to be what does the countdown. Or you see the block next to where it says custom sounds. You can set some custom sounds. And in my particular case, I have one where Canals jumps on and says, hey, 10 to go, and then he counts down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you got Canals telling me right along with my spotter pack, which fits in there. So I still have Canals doing that same thing. I don't get any of the computer or computer generated. Yeah, Dave's back there. I want those files. I want those files. Anybody wants those files, let me know. They've been posted on the forum. You can search for them and get it, or send me an email, send me a PM, whatever, and I'll make sure you get them. Find a place for them, make a post with them so that you can easily download them or whatever. I believe I PM'd the guy who does the spotter pack, and he said here, I ended up saying here's they are, and he posted them. I believe it's in the API section of the forums. There's a section on this program, and in there he posted those. I think that's where those spotter pack or those spotter countdowns are for custom sounds for this custom, and then those customs for countdown to pit stall. They're all listed in there to find if that's where you want to find it. Also, what's in here is you got an enable pit warning. What this, I don't have this selected, but what this does is whatever is in this block will automatically text to the default channel the minute you pull out of your pit stall. So as soon as you pull out your pit stall, it'll say exiting pits to let everybody know you're exiting the pits. Automatic. Also, if you got this block right here checked, that's F4 block on low fuel. So as soon as you get to that 1 gallon of fuel mark, or whatever it is, if you decide you want your low fuel mark to be 10 gallons, you put 10 gallons in there. If you want it to be half a gallon, you put a half a gallon in there. Put 1 gallon in there. When that fuel gets to that level, it'll automatically kick up your fuel block down in your corner, so that you can make changes to your fuel, decide what you're going to do there, or start watching how many laps you got left so that you don't run out of fuel, kind of as a warning. Plus, if you have checked your voice and tone there, then it'll just give you a tone, or it'll give you a voice saying, you get low on, check your gauges or whatever, check your fuel. Underneath that is report out of fuel. And what this does is this sends a text message telling the field, I just ran out of fuel. So that somebody doesn't run you over or something. They know why you're slowing down or whatever. Automatic text it when you run out of fuel. Below this is, I can't even read it. Oh, this is an audible countdown of reminding you of pit speed, is what they say. I couldn't remember the first words. Remind of pit speed. So what it is when you enter pit road and cross that line, tell them what pit road speed is. It'll remind you what pit road speed is. You don't have to look at the little thing to remember it's 45. It'll tell you 45 mile, pit road 45 mile. As soon as you get, if you're running along there 45 and you hit 46, it'll tell you 45 mile an hour pit road. It gives you an audible when you start getting above that. So most of the time, especially on the NASCAR side pit speed, if you get up to that 46, it gives you a warning. If you drop down to 44 and drive a little bit and then go back to 45, you're not going to get a pit road speeding penalty. But if you stay at 46, you're going to get a pit road speeding penalty. You have a section that they average your speed in. As long as that average speed stays within that pit road speeding, you won't get the speeding penalty. So you can kind of adjust it a little bit to stay as fast as possible without getting a penalty. And that really aids in that. An audible thing right there. That's your reminding pit road speed and pit road speeding alarm. That's what those two are. The next one is the warning, repairs pending. If you come in and do repairs or need repairs to your car, you don't get them all done, it'll give you a verbal warning or give you a warning to let you know that you still have repairs that are needed. You didn't get them all done. So if you ever come in and you needed 15 seconds worth of repairs and you come in and do a pit stop and you didn't get them all and you weren't really paying attention if you got them all or not, you come out, it'll give you a little warning telling you still had some repairs. So you might have a second left or something like that in repairs that you didn't get done. If you left your box before those repairs were done, it will audibly remember that. Now this one here, set no tires on pit exit. If you have that one checked, when you leave pit exit, it will automatically deselect your tires. Where that's an advantage is if you're doing Daytona and Talladega and you don't need to take tires, all you're worried about is fuel, then as soon as you leave pit road, you will not be taking any tires when that's set, and then all you have to worry about is what you're doing fuel. You don't have to worry about unselecting your tires. But if you do or run someplace where you are going to want to run tires, then you don't want to have that checked because it's going to come out unchecked, and then you're going to have to go back and recheck them. Because the default in iRacing is to have them checked, and if you're used to that and you set that to no tires, now the default for you is going to be no tires. Yes, sir? Right. It'll do opposite of what it was. It's set to do, the iRacing default is to change 4 tires. So what it does is does the opposite of that. So if you've changed it to where you want your no tires and then this program's going to change it, automatically change it. Yeah, that's one of those little things that you kind of have to remember what your plans are in this whole perspective of a race, because you can think you're going to take tires and not get any, or think I'm not going to get any tires and then be stuck taking 4. So you kind of have to remember what you're going. I always set it to off because I use my button box to decide what I'm doing on tires. One quick button. I can decide that, and I can do that coming down pit road before I get there. So that's why I leave that off. And also this will auto detect what pit stall you're in. So you got a visual right there what pit stall you're in on pit road. In the first pit stall will be 1. If you're in the 13th pit stall, it'll be 13. You'll be looking right there and know what your pit stall is. So anyway, that kind of hits what all of your settings are. Now up here in the corner you have enable car chief. That's your enable being to do all of those things or not. And then you got your enable voice control. Okay, and next to it is click the word list. This right here is your word list. Okay? These are the different things that you can do. And what that is speech recognition. So you can do change in tires, show tires, type up different messages, all kinds of those different things doing voice recognition. But if you guys were here yesterday when I was talking about that, voice recognition uses Windows voice recognition. Unless you've gotten to where you can really do that well, what ends up happening is when you're teaching the computer how you speak, it wants you to speak very computer-like. Take 2 tires. Change right side tires, kind of thing. That's the way the computer wants you to speak, so it can recognize what you're saying. I don't know about you, but when I'm in a race 3 wide, I ain't speaking take 2 tires. I'm going take 2 tires. I want to have to take gas. You know. Well, then it starts doing whatever it thought you said. It tries to decide what you did, and it can get you really in a mess of what it was that you want to do. So anyway, and then you got the ability. Some of this doesn't work completely yet, and I haven't played with it a lot. If any of you have, please speak up. But you have the ability to create lists of players. Like if you're a guy who admins a race or something and you got 4 or 5 guys you never want to be in a race, you can create a list, and if they join your server, they're automatically booted because they're on your blacklist. Okay, then you come down here, and this section right here, this little section right here, that's your fuel information. Okay, gives you the same type of information that you get off that Z1 or the iFuel program, but you see that? How hard that is to read? I'm standing right here and I can hardly read that. If you're in a race trying to glance up and read it, it's kind of tough. It's kind of tough. But there's the ability to do that. Also, right here, when you're setting your custom tones for warnings up here, you can have just a tone or the custom sound. This is where you would enter that custom sound there. Or you can enter a different type of Windows default tone that'll come up right there. Okay? And then this section right here, with the new added features of iRacing to have custom channels on the radios, you can enter, like in this particular case, I have HCR1, which is my team. Every time I join a server, it automatically creates that channel for me. Every time I join a server, whether it be practice or race or whatever, that channel is automatically created. So it's on my list already. So if any one of my other teammates or somebody jumps in and they go to that default channel and start talking, I've already have that channel created and I can hear that. The only issue with that is when you first join the iRacing server, you have to wait until you see that channel created before you do anything. If you click on the garage to check your set or click to go right into test or right into warm-up, before that's done, then it didn't get created. It gets sent out as a partial text message. If you see some of that jibber-jabber kind of partial text messages showing up when you're in a server, that's probably somebody who has iBuzz that got too much in a hurry and didn't allow the default channel to get created. Just takes... Yeah, as soon as iRacing loads up, comes available, it texts that, puts it in their text block. You know how you do that. Add at HCR1 would be the channel. It automatically puts that in a text block and goes. Well, if you click on something before that finishes printing that out, then you've got a partial text that goes out and another partial text that goes out, and it looks like people are looking on there going, what did you say? Yeah, exactly. So keep that in mind when you do it. Make sure you allow that to happen. So anyway, so looking at that, anybody have any questions about this iBuzz, or any questions for me on this? Kind of hit it all. Yes, sir. How much resources does it take? Very little to none. I never even realize it's running other than the voice that it gives me. I have seen no bog down of the PC or changes of my graphics, FPSs, or anything. It's a program that uses very, very, very little resources to put out this information and help it work. It uses a little more when you use speech recognition, but not enough to see anything. I think any computer that can run iRacing is going to be able to run this in the background without any problem. Runs just fine with iSpeed, Z1.
I run a ton of programs.
Yeah, I've never had it have any issues with any programs. I have about 5 or 6 different programs I run at the same time. I run every race to try to get every advantage to win, you know. And I've never had any issues with any of them like that. If you just want to use the audio portion of it,
behind it, you don't see it.
well, what you can do is you can run it in the background, but to be able to see it, you have to be able to bring it to the front. So if you're running in full screen mode in iRacing, you're going to pull this open before you start the server. Once you get in the server, then you go Alt Tab out, and you can look and see all of that stuff.
Before you would join.
And then go back in and join your practice session or whatever it is. You have to be loaded. You have to be loaded into the session. You can't do it. You can't do it before you hit join session. You have to be joined into that session so that it sees who's in there in order to see that. You can't look at it and see what the strength of field is before you join the session. If that's what you're trying. If that's the question you're trying to get. Yeah, there's nothing that's going to help you cherry pick a race by what the strength of field is. So you won't be able to know that until after you've gone in there. And typically, most of those guys that are worried about a high strength of field, they've got on their watch lists or friends lists all the guys that have high I rating. And if they're all joined in a race, they join in there because they know it's going to be a high strength of field. Yes, as long as you have the ability to run iDisplay, so that your iPad is one of your screens and is able to read the telemetry or the information coming off of iRacing. That's the deal. Like in Science Gates, where he's got 2 computers, and he's got that second computer getting that information through the, I think it's called SDK or whatever it is, getting that information off of there, then he could run it on that second computer off that other screen and have that information and have it running over there and give you the same information. Okay, there's what iFuel looks like. So what it is, I've got it set up so that you can see there's 2 tabs here. An early pit strategy and a late pit strategy tab. Okay? So if you go into a race, and this is one of those programs that you have to open after you're in the server.
So this is a totally separate app.
It's a totally separate app that runs. But you get it off the same website you do iBuzzer. The 2 guys are kind of working together. And they give some kind of deal if you buy them together or buy them separate or whatever. But what he's done is he's created the ability to tell what lap you're on, the first lap you can pit on, right, in your early pit stop. The last lap, to still maintain an early pit stop strategy, will come up. How much fuel you're remaining, how much laps are remaining, laps till empty. And then this section down here stays the same no matter which strategy you're choosing to do. It'll give you your session laps and fuel per lap and how much fuel capacity that car has and total fuel needed to run the race, you know, whether it's 25 gallons, 36 gallons, whatever it is, fuel stops, laps per tank, give you that information. Of course, that information, what you get out of it is as good as what you put into it. So in other words, the more laps you run, the more accurate it is. You get to a point where that gets extremely accurate.